give you a standing ovation because Deathstalker fucking rips, man. Like this is
Okay, thank you. That's
um
awesome.
I told Daniel yesterday that this is one of the most anticipated movies of the year for me, and it delivered on all fronts. I even got super giddy when I saw my name in the credits from the Kickstarter campaign. So
Awesome.
I am beyond pleased, and as if you're trying to please an audience of Matt, right? But just
Well,
congratulations on us on a film.
that makes me feel really good. I'm glad. I'm at that like nervous stage right now where I don't know how people are going to react to this movie. So hearing that makes me feel good and quells a bit of that nervousness. I'm glad
Well,
that it hit all the right notes for you because it's a pretty
it
crazy.
did. Well, it is. And, I think one of the things that stood out to me most is folks that are people that know your work already. I think already had kind of an expectation in regards to like, we know you're going to deliver an emphasis on practical effects. We know you make a lot of the monsters yourself with your team. So I think there's already this level of excitement that based on the quality you've delivered before, it's like we kind of know what we're getting, right? It's like, John Carpenter makes a movie. It's okay. We know we're going to get something John Carpenter. So with Steven Kostanski, I think you've etched out a niche for yourself where genre heads like myself, and I know I'm not alone, are just super appreciative of your dedication to the craft.
Well, thank
So
you.
I think that's something that folks will really appreciate in this. But my first question for you has to just kind of go back a little bit to, why Deathstalker? What is it about this series, this franchise that you felt deserved a revisitation?
I mean, I've been wanting to make a fantasy movie for a long time. It feels like things have come full circle a little bit because when Astron 6 was first starting out back in like 2006, 2007-ish, like we made a little web series called Goreblade that was very much a reference and parody to Deathstalker. And so ever since then, like I've always loved fantasy stuff. It's a perfect genre for somebody like me who loves like makeup effects, creatures, stop motion, miniatures. Like it's a great place to just dump all of that stuff. And so I've wanted to make a feature in the fantasy landscape for a long time. And so when I got shown this list of Roger Corman properties that were up for reimaginings, I just went right down to D and was like, Deathstalker, please, because I was familiar with the franchise. I'm a huge Deathstalker 2 head. That movie, in my opinion, but I feel a lot of people share this opinion, that's the strongest one, being a Jim
Yes.
Wynorski movie.
Yes.
I mean, that guy's an amazing filmmaker. He's made some of my favorite movies. Deathstalker 2 is among them. I watch that movie like a few times a year at least. It is such a fun ride. It's so fun to show people who haven't seen it because I don't think they're expecting the silly adventure they're going to get. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I wanted to pull from that a little bit, but at the same time carve my own path, make my own thing, and make a fantasy movie that was more all encompassing beyond just like what cinema has to offer, but also like video games, comics, um, like as a kid, I used to play Magic cards a lot, and I would read like the novelizations of Magic. Uh, there's one, what was it called? It's like Arena. That was a
Yes.
really good one. Yeah, there was almost like
With like the
Magic.
Minotaur on the front?
No, it's like I think it's like two guys casting magic at each other. Maybe they did an alt cover, but it was the one where it was like a tournament.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, like pulling from that, pulling from I used to when I was a little kid, I used to play Heretic, which was like a Doom clone from the
Which they
90s.
just
And then
remastered, by the way.
yep, oh, you better the minute I saw that is like I didn't even have to think. My hands just automatically were going to the
What's
PlayStation
happening?
store and buying. Yeah, it was just before like 5 minutes later, I was just sitting there playing Heretic and being like, wait, what just happened? But I was actually playing as I was writing the script for Deathstalker. I was playing Hexen on the N64, which is a horribly frustrating game, and especially on
Yes.
that console with that controller. So that definitely influenced Deathstalker as well. There's little like bits of Hexen DNA sprinkled throughout. But yeah, I want it to be a bigger thing than just Deathstalker. I treat it the way I treat all my movies, where I'm like, what if this is the last movie I get to make? So I try to throw every single thing I have into it to make it as all encompassing as possible. So yeah.
Well, you've succeeded. I mean, again, I could gush. I'm going to gush all over this movie for you.
Well,
And I'm going to be, I told Daniel yesterday I'm going to be in Austin next week, and I'm going to be the one raising my hand and fist up every time, he's knocking down a monster in the theater. Um,
awesome.
and you use so many different filmmaking techniques, and I don't know, I think as someone I'm in my 40s, right? So I kind of have an appreciation for, a time when movies were more based on practical effects. But you also bring in things like stop motion, obviously a Ray Harryhausen influence.
Oh yeah.
Um, you know, I think aside from the desire, your just love of the craft, why is it so important for your films that they have this emphasis on the practical and the real as opposed to deferring to more computer animation and kind of, I don't want to call it the easy way, but just a different way?
I mean, part of that is yeah, just a very practical and like realistic answer, which is that I just don't know how to do VFX. I know how to do stop motion. I grew up doing it. So this is just what my hands know how to do, and I feel like that's never going to change. So it's what all my movies are going to have. But I mean also like artistically, it just makes more sense to have a real thing either on set or even if it's a real thing that's composited into a shot. Like I can see that somebody's hands made it, and that's part of what gives it meaning and some weight and some substance. Digitally generated things, while cool, and there's definitely so many VFX that I love, and there's hundreds of VFX shots in this movie that you don't even notice because it's painting out rods or cleaning up a part of a shot, like painting a light out of a shot. But yeah, like the practical component is important because like I think there's just a real connection there when the audience sees a guy in a rubber suit. They're like, oh, that's a guy like suffering a little bit right now to play this part. That's a guy in a two-headed troll costume that clearly his vision is compromised, and he's trying to fight this action man that has a sword and is way more nimble than he is. So that like part that's just part of the fun is there's like an unpredictability. There's all sorts of like happy accidents, things you don't predict come out of having a practical thing on set. Whereas VFX, like a CG computer generated thing, you can dial it into exactly what you want it to be. And
Right.
I don't feel like that's the same thing. It's like similar to like just actors, like having actors and dealing with actors and directing them. Unpredictable things happen, personalities clash, ideas clash. Act like people try a thing and it doesn't quite work, but it leads you down a path to something different. It's like the unpredictability of actually being on set and doing it in real time is what leads to the magic, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that the first, in the bar scene, because the first thing I thought when I saw this bar scene is like, Steven's a guy who knows his like fantasy video games and setups because this is like you have to have some sort of like tavern scene where he comes in to get, rest his bones a bit, and then something happens that he's not expecting. And then you see the monster come in. And like I know that it's, a man in a rubber suit, but that's like I think it almost makes it more of a Deathstalker movie because you can see that, because you know that there
Yes.
is like I'm like, that's great. Like that is exactly what I wanted. And I think you've made a movie that speaks to people that don't want perfection. They want something that looks
Yes.
really cool and fits the world that it's meant to be in. My personal favorite monster has got to be that mummy with like the saw blade that it throws out.
But yeah, it's
Um,
Scarabus. Yeah, he's
yes.
pretty great.
I mean, any plans on releasing some sort of compendium or like art book of like some of the work you and your team did to craft some of these monsters?
I mean, I think there's plans to put some stuff out in regards to the creatures. I mean, I certainly have a plethora of behind the scenes photos that I'll be sharing of all the sculpts and things for this. Because Scarabus was one of the monsters that I got to sculpt and basically make start to finish. Um, but yeah, I think the Kickstarter had like an art book companion piece that you could get. But I mean, that stuff will all come out once the movie
Right.
is released for sure. Like, I want the behind the scenes stuff is the fun of a movie like this, so I want to make sure everybody gets all the details on how these things were made and some of the absurd behind the scenes rigging we had to come up with to make some of these creatures work because they were maybe some of my most unruly monsters that I've ever built in terms of like making a performer suffer to get any kind of performance out of it. So yeah, I want to make sure the whole world gets to enjoy that.
Well, I know I spoke with Matt Ninneber a few times this year, and like he put out a Night's War earlier this year, and I told him like this is the kind of dark fantasy movie that like we don't get that often, and now we get Deathstalker in the same year, and I feel like abundance is just us right now. But when you think about the folks you're working with on these, do you tend to have like the same, more or less actors that you bring in to put through this suffering process, or you're constantly recruiting new people that wanna get their name in the game?
I mean, on this one, it was mostly familiar faces. Like Matt played the two-headed troll. He played Desperon, the stone guy. He played one of the swamp guys. And then my effects friend Jay Deathridge got stuffed into the creature suit that appears at the end. I don't want to spoil what that creature is, but that was maybe the most painful suit on the whole movie for a multitude of reasons. And then Troy James, who I worked with on The Void, I managed to hook up with him again for this one, and so he played Scarabus, the Cyclops mummy, and he was able to put a bit of his contortionist skills to good use as that character. So yeah, it was a lot of familiar faces, but then there were some new people that came out as well to play the Dreadites and things, and they got to have fun suffering alongside the veterans of Steve Kostanski movies.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good company, right? Because I don't know if people would want to go through this again if they didn't feel like it was worth it. So there's got to be something in the culture you cultivate with these actors and these performers that, gives them this like, it's got to be reciprocal at least. And when you think about those monsters, I know you mentioned you're playing Hexen. You've got obviously a lot of influences from your own personal tastes. What is the creative process for you when you're trying to kind of sketch these out? Because I think the thing that's hard for me to, as someone who's not as creative in that regard, is to how do you get to these images and these like the Dreadites themselves? They almost look like the Vlad the Impaler suit from Dracula,
Yes.
but almost like just grosser and more zombified. So what's your process?
I think it's just stuff gets mixed into the pot of my brain and it comes out. And like after the fact, I kind of realize what the influences are because Dracula definitely was an influence on this movie, like Bram Stoker's Dracula. I know we temp scored some of it with tracks from Dracula. I mean, there's a scene with the main villain Nekromemnon in his lair that to me feels very Dracula-esque.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I'm just kind of subconsciously pulling from stuff all the time. Like, seeing like the Desperon fight, the big stone guy. Obviously, with that, I'm pulling from Ray Harryhausen
Right.
for that sequence. Uh, with specifically with how he's dispatched, it's a very Talos from Jason and the Argonauts uh, type of climax to that scene. But yeah, I kind of just pull from places that I like, and then images I like, and just like I'm always just mashing things together. Like the Scarabus, the Cyclops mummy, it was really like, okay, I want a mummy guy, but I also want a Cyclops. What if it was a mummy Cyclops? And it starts out as like kind of a dumb idea, but then I'm like, okay, well, hold on. What if the eye is attached to this almost like mechanical spider thing that is mounted on this corpse's head? So the idea is that this spider is reanimating this corpse, and that's actually like the living entity that's controlling everything. So, I mean, it's all very childish. It's just me mashing action figures together, making up people's backstories. Like that's really all this is. It's just an excuse for me to play with toys, except now I've got, real real actors and stuntmen in these wardrobe, in these outfits, and these masks, and I can just tell them to punch each other all day.
Far more, more living toys in this case.
Yeah,
They're kind
exactly.
of yours to do what you will. And I'm curious to know like the trajectory from crowdfunding to Shout's involvement. I know you work with them on Frankie Frico, and so I'm sure there's already an embedded relationship. But this had such a groundswell of community support to begin with. At what point did you get the interest of others in saying, hey, maybe this could have more legs if we bring it to theatrical? Because seeing this in a theater, like I just can't wait for people to experience something like this in a theater because we just don't get movies like this theatrically.
Well, I mean, I gotta give a lot of credit to Shout for having faith in me and my direction I wanted to take this movie with. I mean, this has been in development for quite a while, a few years now, and the crowdfunding component was not a last minute thing, but it was a thing decided. fairly close to actual pre-production of the movie. And usually crowdfunding on my movies, the reason for it is that it unlocks funds in advance of production. Typically low budget movies, you don't, by the time you do all the bank shit you have to do, like the money doesn't come in until like a couple weeks before you go to camera. So
Right.
crowdfunding, it's a great marketing and promotional tool. It gets the word out that this is a thing that's happening. Um, it allows people to kind of have early access to stuff relating to the movie and basically pre-buy the movie in some cases. But then also it allows us to have money months in advance so we can actually spend it on building creatures, because that stuff doesn't happen in a week. Like I need like 3 months. I mean, I was building stuff for this movie while I was writing it back in 2022, I think.
Oh
Like
my God.
the like acolyte mask, like the guys with the pulsing faces, and the Dreadites. Actually, the Dreadite helmet, I sculpted that while I was writing because
Huh.
I, I like to procrastinate, especially when I'm writing. Writing is the least interesting part of this whole process to me, so I'm usually making a thing at the same time. So that's how we got the Dreadites and the acolytes, because I had those masks going like off to the side at the same time. So yeah, creature stuff takes a lot of time, and so that motivates going the crowdfunding route to allow us to basically have the money to build everything so it's actually ready for when we go to set.
I mean, that's what got me interested in the crowdfunding is that you think that, the however this was kind of got out there was that you needed, it was like we need this money so we can make these monsters. And the more we can generate, the more monsters we can get. And I think because again, as I said before, like you have a standard of quality, I think a lot of folks that like your movies already we're in, right? We're already in. So it's like you tell us we need a little bit of money to make some more monsters. Like, okay, well, I know what you're gonna do. So here, insert Fry from Futurama, take my money meme. It's like this is just ready to go. And I also love your choice in music, like just the revision, like the Deathstalker theme song is just an absolute banger. Kind of got a little goosebumps
Yes.
when I heard it. But then you also brought in Blitz Berlin, and I'm wondering, did you always have them in mind for this, or was there something else that transpired that kind of made that connection?
I mean, I was fully committed to them being the composers like from day one. I just love those guys. I love their work. I love working with them. Uh, I think they've got like they're very skilled and they're able to kind of go down the weird paths that I want them to go on, because I'll give them like very specific inspiration for stuff. I mean, you can just look to the Frankie Frico score
Right.
for a perfect example of that. And so, yeah, they were technically like the first ones for me that were on board as far as composing the music for this. And then, yeah, like with Slash being on board as an EP, he brought in Bear McCreary, who then they collaborated on doing this Deathstalker theme song for us, and they also then brought in Chuck Sereno, the original Deathstalker 2 composer, to like recompose the
I could hear
Deathstalker
that.
theme. Yeah, and so yeah, it was just like such a fun, amazing surprise to get this song. And so once we got the song, I passed it off to Blitz Berlin, and they wove it throughout the whole movie, and just found ways to integrate it into everything. They would like pull pieces from it, like certain instrumentations, and drop them into scenes. It was just really awesome to have this thing to play around with because it's so huge and so epic, and like yeah, so much bigger than our budget would normally allow as far as music goes. Which is another great thing I love about Blitz Berlin is that for not a lot of money they can make a huge sounding score. I don't want that to be it. Just to be clear, I don't want that to be an advertisement to filmmakers
Right.
that like Blitz Berlin's going to work for cheap. I'm just saying like they, with the budget that they had, they were able to make it sound like a huge orchestral sweeping fantasy score in the way that I wanted it to, and without actually having an orchestra at their disposal. So yeah,
I mean, just a lot
really,
of
really
value from
awesome
them.
guys. I love them.
Well, my last question for you is, when I spoke to you last year, I asked you kind of, why'd you make Frankie Frico? And you said, I want to make movies I want to see, right? So you've made a little stinker movie, you've made a cosmic horror movie, you've made your fantasy movie. What, without committing to anything, like what would be another dream project for you to create that video store of your dreams?
I mean, I got to do sci-fi horror at some point because that's another subgenre that I love, and it would kind of pull me back into like a little closer to the void in terms of like being more of a straight horror movie. But but having the kind of elaborate visuals that I like to have, lots of creatures and like basically the similar to Deathstalker, where it's like medieval fantasy setting with monsters. I'd love to have kind of like retro future setting with monsters. So yeah, that's a genre that I'm gonna have to tackle at some point. I don't think there's any question about it. But also, we'll see how Deathstalker does, and if people take to it and it makes some money, I'll definitely be down to make another one. This is the kind of movie that deserves a sequel, I think. So
Yes. I mean, it's in the pantheon of the Deathstalker legacy, and I think you've got the foundations built with a great, great actor in Daniel, but also some fantastic designs. So I can't imagine where you're going to go next. But Stephen, I just want to remind everyone watching this that go see Deathstalker in a theater with people on October 10th, because this is just it has to be experienced that way. I'm gonna, even if I can't get into Fantastic Fest screening when I'm there, I'm gonna go see it in the theater on the 10th myself, because this is one of those movies we just don't get anymore. And I want to thank you again, not just for your time, but also for continuing to be an amazing shepherd of genre work, and doing it the way that I know a lot of us appreciate. So can't wait for what we're always in for whatever you do next.
well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. I will keep making them as long as you guys keep watching
You've got my eyes and my wallet, so keep on going.
them. Awesome.